Immersed Robot.
Hello everyone, welcome to Immersed Robot yet again, and this time I wanted to take a look at the Golf Club VR. Now, this is a game which I heard about a long time ago, and there were reports about performance issues initially. I'm not sure if that's been improved over the time it's been released, but it's been out for a long time now, so I'm sure they've patched it and it performs a lot better now. But this was one that I remember having sort of notoriously demanding performance, really. It needed quite a high-spec system to get running smoothly, and I've owned this game for a long time, but I've not put too much time into it for whatever reason. I'm not too sure why that is, because I do enjoy golf games. I'm not particularly good at them, as you'll see in the footage that I'll present here. I'm also not a golfer in real life. I don't play golf in real life at all, so you'll notice that the gameplay I'm showing here isn't going to be of a particularly high quality, but that's not the purposes of this test, of course. I'm just showing how the game performs on an RTX 3080 based system. So when I first went into the game, I kept the visual quality on low, the multi-sampling anti-aliasing on 0, and then the super sampling on level 1. And as you can see on the FPS VR overlay at the bottom of the screen, I'm running the index at 90 Hz, which is keeping a relatively constant 90 frames per second on these settings, and the Steam VR super sampling is at 100% as well, just to give us a nice baseline to get started here. And as you can see, the game is performing perfectly fine here. You can see from the frame timings on both the GPU and the CPU side that they're not struggling at all. So the game is running absolutely rock solid here on these relatively low settings, but it does look good. It still looks good, relatively sharp in the headset, even at this resolution scaling level of 100%. There is some anti-aliasing issues that you can see on the trees and things like that in the headset, but not too much of an issue for me personally, but it's obviously something to mention. So after a while, I went ahead and went back into the in-game graphical settings and changed to the medium preset, the medium graphical preset. But I did keep everything else at the same level. And again, no issues whatsoever. Very slightly higher frame timings, but nothing too much of a difference really. And the game did look noticeably different. It looked better on these settings. There was more detail, more trees it seemed like. Perhaps that was just in my head, but it did look better anyway, overall I would say. So again, no issues on medium settings. I decided to quickly try high settings as well, keeping everything else exactly the same again. And you can see the frame timings are still almost identical really. And again, detail was slightly increased, and it was noticeable to me as well in game. I did notice that there was more detail in the environments, and it looked absolutely fantastic. I've got to say, it did look great. The only issue, I do want to mention the anti-aliasing. That's the only really small issue that I noticed on these settings. So I decided to do something about that. I changed the multi-sampling anti-aliasing, ramped it right up to level 4 just to see what a difference that made, and I quickly tested that, and it looked like it increased frame timings quite a bit, but it was still running at the 90 Hz, no issues. I also upped super sampling, settling on 1.2 super sampling in game while retaining Steam VR super sampling at 100%. And this was the point really where things started to struggle very slightly. You can see on the GPU side, the frame timings are very occasionally going over that 11 millisecond threshold, pushing it down, the frame rate down slightly. But the CPU side, no issues whatsoever. For the most part though, even at these high settings, the game was still managing to just about cling on to that 90 FPS for the most part. It was only in certain areas of the course that you'll notice it dropping down to above the 11 millisecond and drop in frame rate. So going back into the settings again, I dropped multi-sampling anti-aliasing back down to 0 and then settled back down on super sampling to 1, but then I changed the index refresh rate up to 120 Hz. I quickly lowered the in-game graphical settings down to medium because it didn't look like I was going to maintain 120 on high, and you can see on medium with no multi-sampling anti-aliasing and in-game super sampling down to 1 once again, I was able to maintain 120 90Hz for the most part. There were issues. It did occasionally drop now and again below that frame rate, but it was still manageable, and the game was mostly running at the native 120 FPS to match the index refresh rate. I dropped the in-game graphical settings down to low and then selected 144Hz in the index just to see if it could maintain this, just out of interest really more than anything else. And it was struggling in places, but it could sort of maintain 144Hz, but it was dropping quite regularly in all honesty. It probably wasn't worth playing on this setting if you wanted a constant and solid frame rate. It just couldn't quite maintain that, unfortunately. I didn't try it, but you could certainly lock the frame rate in SteamVR at 72 FPS if you were determined to, run at 144Hz in the index headset. Of course, you'll be running in constant reprojection with that, but some people don't mind that, so that was certainly an option as well. So I decided to ramp everything up again. I changed super sampling up to 1.5, multi-sampling anti-aliasing to level 2, and then I ran the game at 80Hz in the Valve index, and it was able to maintain that 80Hz just about. It was right on the edge really, and it would occasionally drop into reprojection. So it seemed unsurprisingly really that the super sampling level was affecting performance more than anything else in game. When you ramped in-game super sampling all the way up to 1.5, it was just a little bit too much, even at 80Hz unfortunately. But if you drop the super sampling down to 1.2, maintaining that high setting, and then you can up multi-sampling anti-aliasing to level 4, then 80 frames per second is achievable. It keeps it pretty constant. It's right on the borderline again, but it's in some places, but it is relatively solid for the most part in the game. So if you have a Rift S or something like that and you want to play on 80 frames per second native, then you can certainly do that with these options. So I changed the refresh rate in the index to 90Hz and then lowered multi-sampling anti-aliasing to level 2, and 90Hz was running back to how it was before really, relatively comfortably, but there certainly were portions of the game where it would drop again. I think for the most part that these performance dips are dependent on the specific location of where you are on the course. Different, very slight points of view, very slight changes in environment can drop frame rate in certain areas, but it's honestly not too much to worry about. It doesn't affect gameplay too much, especially when you're moving around from shot to shot so rapidly. You don't really notice these dips, and I wouldn't have noticed them too much without having the constant reminder of FPS VR, the overlay at the bottom of the screen there, reminding me that I was losing a couple of frames here and there. But the game performs really nicely on an RTX 3080. You can't ramp everything up to the absolute maximum levels, of course, but you can certainly get a pretty high happy medium within that by changing some of the settings in there. So it's a great game, I've got to say. I want to spend a lot more time into it. I need the practice, as you can see, but I do recommend people trying this if they've got any inclination or any love of golf games at all. Then this is a fantastic one to try. It looks incredible and it feels great to play, so highly recommended, and it also runs pretty well as well now. So thank you for watching this little performance test on the Golf Club VR. Please do like the video and don't forget to subscribe if you get a minute as well. That will be appreciated, and I'll see you next time.
Please hesitantly tap the like button and don't forget to subscribe for more concise and informative VR content. You can also join our Discord by clicking on the link in the description of this video. And, as always, I'll catch you on the flippity flip.